It is 8 a.m. on March 20th, 1995, in Tokyo, Japan. The subway is bustling with passengers, businessmen on their way to work, tourists ready to see the sights, women and children going to the city. 5 men board the trains, unbutton their coats, and begin stabbing bags of dangerous sarin gas attached to their vests, releasing the deadly nerve gas into the air. The gas spreads through the air quickly, coming into contact with the passengers and giving them symptoms in a matter of seconds. Sarin, also known as isopropyl methylfluorophosphate, is a human-made chemical warfare agent classified as a nerve gas. The gas is extremely volatile, is heavier than air, allowing it to move across the ground in poorly ventilated areas with ease, and has a lethal dose for humans as little as 0.01 milligrams per kilogram. This makes it easy to see why the terrorists chose this gas. When coming into contact with the human body, the victim's muscles go into overdrive. Coughing begins, convulsions ensue, respiratory failure, and later death, all in as little as 15 minutes. As a result of the terrorists' actions in the Tokyo subway system, over 1,000 people were seriously injured by the sarin gas, and 12 were killed. These terrorists were part of a domestic terrorism cult movement called Aum Shinrikyo. This cult is a doomsday cult founded by Shoko Asahara in 1984. This group was motivated by the desire to jumpstart doomsday, or the end of times, the nerve gas attack being one of those attempts. In an effort to bring more attention to their cause, the Doomsday Cult released sarin gas on 3 lines of the Tokyo Metro and was released in the rail cars themselves, but not in the surrounding area. Prior to the sarin gas attack in 1995, it was believed among the Japanese that their country had a low crime and corruption rate compared to other highly developed countries. Japan considered itself as a safe, peaceful, and homogeneous society. The Japanese and its government share sympathetic attitudes and core values of democracy, prosperity, and national unity. However, Japan is not gun-free, and not entirely safe either. There are more gun deaths each year in Japan than in Great Britain. Often crimes go unreported in Japan, especially rape and domestic violence, which results from the stigma of being a victim of crimes. Until recently, terrorism still remains a taboo subject that is rarely discussed. Incidents such as the 1995 sarin gas attack is seen as a unique case that's not labeled as a terrorist act. Therefore, counterterrorism police consists of loosely organized supervision that did not give government officials much power and emergency response preparedness. It is possible these cultural traits of Japan were key features leading to the large organization of the terrorist group by Aum Shinrikyo and unfortunate terrorist attacks. But how worse could the attack have been? The 5 trains that the 5 attackers were on converged at the Kasumi Gaseki station, the power center for the city. There was an assumption that this attack wanted to disrupt the National Police Agency at the time of shift change at 8:30 a.m. Over 9 million passengers ride the subway daily, so a terrorist attack during the rush hour at 8 a.m. could have caused a massive number of injuries and fatalities. Fortunately, the sarin liquid used was only 30% pure, which saved the subway passengers from the catastrophic and deadly effects of pure sarin. Unlike pure sarin, that is colorless, odorless, and lethal, the impure sarin is less lethal and took on an odor, which alerted the subway passengers of the existence of the dangerous chemical. It would have caused more devastating effects to the passengers if the terrorists were to release the sarin gas in the subway terminals where there was no ventilation. The gas could have lingered in the atmosphere, where it could enter the lungs and land on the skin of a larger number of people in a more poorly ventilated area. Because the impure sarin was released in liquid form in plastic bags that were punctured by sharp point of the umbrella, sarin was not released into the air in respiratory droplets, and the attack occurred in a smaller, more ventilated area. Therefore, only those very close to the release point suffered severe injuries and death. In many ways, a 1994 nerve gas attack on the village of Matsumoto could be considered a precursor to the 1995 subway system attacks in Tokyo, carried out by the same culprit and the same chemical, the Amshinkyo cult, with sarin gas. Additional similarities include the Japanese government consequence management inefficiency, critical to the severity of the attack, which can be attributed to officials' historical and cultural reluctance to engage in terrorism discussions. The difference between the two attacks include the motive and the means of delivery. The motivation of the previous attack was to kill the local court judges, ruling on a civil case over land rights, while the subway attack was meant only to kill as many innocents as possible. In the 1995 subway system attacks, plastic bags were used to transport the chemical solution, which were then punctured to expose passengers to sarin, while the attack on Matsumoto involved modified refrigerated trucks. Due to the type of sarin that was used, and the terrorists releasing the gas in the subway car instead of the surrounding areas, the environment was more contained, preventing a more catastrophic scenario. As a result, with the use of pure sarin and more effective delivery techniques, this terrorist attack could have affected millions of passengers. One of the most critical issues with Japan's emergency response was problem recognition. Serious problems can be seen in the gathering, analyzing, and use of information related to the sarin attack. This directly influenced how Japan would modify its plan of action for future attacks. The Japanese government neglected the signs that ultimately led to this dangerous chemical attack, even though cult leader elections were brazenly taking place. Those elections brought the group into the public's knowledge, but after these elections, the cult secluded themselves and begun their experiments with biological and chemical weapons. Due to the events of World War II, however, Japan did not have a strong intelligence gathering network. Their constitution forbade the use of preventative surveillance techniques by the police, making it extremely difficult to see terrorist-type threats. Therefore, due to Japanese restraints, they were unable to see the signs that would have prepared them for a chemical attack. The first emergency responders were the transit workers in direct service of the different trains and stations. Sarin gas was released around 8 a.m. On the Hibiya line, passengers started reporting sickness after only 10 minutes. This led train officials to issue evacuation alarms. Despite the alarms and a large number of medical personnel entering the station, the train still departed only 7 minutes late to the next station, where finally service was stopped and the passengers were directed to leave. On the Chiyoda line, 2 employees inadvertently cleaned the sarin liquid from the train floor with newspapers after complaints from passengers. This would later prove fatal for both employees. On the Marunouchi line, the train continued running until 9:27 a.m., long after the other lines had halted service. This prolonged service led to further contamination and exposure for hundreds of more citizens. It is clear that lack of hazard recognition can be clearly attributed to the lack of training of transit workers. There did not exist a central line of communication that allowed for recognition of a multi-station problem. Instead, each station believed that it was facing an isolated issue. Moving forward, Japan should establish a better communication method between all train stations, all job functions, and all organizations throughout the country. Communication is important, as it increases coherence within a country and helps officials to recognize the hazard faster and to better cultivate appropriate solutions. Police and medical technicians, while better trained to deal with this type of attack, lacked effective communication and coordination that could have led to a better response. Despite calls starting shortly after 8 a.m., the National Police Agency did not recognize until 8:44 a.m. that a much stronger response plan was needed. Despite suspecting that a major attack was happening, trains were not halted until 9:27 a.m. Furthermore, the identity of the gas was also not known to police and military until nearly 2 hours after the attack. Coordination by police and military was slow. Emergency response personnel was not informed of the identity of the gas until an hour after it was known, and hospitals were never informed. The lack of coordination by police, military, and medical personnel can be attributed to a lack of precedent and a bureaucratic structure and culture that inhibited cooperation. Following the chemical attack, Japan recognized a need for modifications to prevent and better respond to potential future attacks. Training for first responders was implemented, intended to train in the recognition and response to a chemical attack. Training was implemented with simulations and drills aimed at providing agencies with the opportunity to collaborate in a controlled environment. Also, an initiative to inform responders and the public on the nature of dangerous chemical agents was started. Information on nerve agents became open, and a manual for medical emergency services was published. The Tokyo Fire Department worked with Tokyo University with the purpose of training for emergencies. These trainings raised awareness and informed police, emergency responders, and volunteers of the dangers of entering a scene without proper protection. Furthermore, Japan revised its definition of terrorism and moved to prioritize chemical attacks in its serious incidents list. Japan held its first bioterrorism conference in 1999 and allocated funds for anti-bioterrorism preparedness. A multi-agency response plan has since then been detailed for a more effective response to chemical terrorism. When examining the case of the sarin gas attack in Tokyo, the safety review highlights the importance of preemptive hazard analysis, bringing together a diverse group of people to review a situation with a broad safety perspective to minimize or eliminate potential hazards. Therein lies the primary challenge of safety. Safety is a subjective term that requires judgment on behalf of those intent on establishing it. To find the balance between pessimism and optimism, to find realism, where safety can be reasonably employed and hazards eliminated. The Tokyo sarin gas attack showed lack of judgment on both parties, the terrorists and Japanese government officials. The terrorists for their low success rate, and the government officials that allowed it to happen in the first place. With new technological advancements happening every day, the sarin gas attack also shows how it is important that safety advancements proceed apace for the protection of industry, economy, and ultimate human well-being.
Hey, it's your boy. Be sure to smash that like button and subscribe. It really helps out this channel. Check out our Patreon, and I'll see you next time.